Durango Forum. We do these usually every other month on the 4th. A different presentation to keep you all updated on whatever's happening in the city. Tonight's is about downtown's next step. Who knows that? Some of you laugh, but some of you don't know, I bet. But yes, there's some of you know it really, really well. So we're giving an update on the project. Also, if this is your first time hearing about downtown's next step, don't be shy to ask all sorts of questions. So I'm going to bring, oh, he's already up here. Okay. If you didn't get a chance to sign in, we have these fancy schmancy iPads in the back that you can sign in. I had been doing handwriting sign-in sheets for a while, and I was getting a lot of bounce back emails on my thank you for coming and here's what's next. So as try as I might, I fail at reading handwriting sometimes. So if you could sign in the iPads, it's just your name and email address. And the only thing we're using that for is to say thanks and let you know when upcoming meetings are, to keep you informed. So there is also, at the end of this evening, you'll see QR codes on each of these tables, and then you'll see QR codes on the entry table over there. If you could let us know how we did tonight with the Engage Durango Forum, that would be really helpful in us getting better and better with how we're asking the community for feedback. And then there's food on the very back table, so if you're hungry and you just came from work and you need a snack, there's plenty of snacks back there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Devin, who's the Downtown's Next Step project. There'll be a very short presentation. This is like about 10-15 minutes, very high-level view of Downtown's Next Step. And then we'll jump into a short question and answer. And then from there, we break out. So the whole purpose of the Engage Durango Forum, just so you all know, is to get some FaceTime with the folks who are staff members of City of Durango. Most of the staff that you see in the room are executive level leaders in the City of Durango. So feel free to visit our tables, ask about what's going on at each department. You'd be surprised. It's a really great way to get to know us as people. All right.
Thanks, Nancy. Hi, everybody. Devin King again, multimodal manager. I've seen many of you, and many of you have heard me speak. So yeah, we're going to cover just a quick update on Downtown's Next Step. We're going to talk about project background, community. So quick summary of the project. We'll start off with the history. The project was identified in the multimodal transportation plan. So for those that don't know, the multimodal division has a multimodal transportation plan that really provides the framework for transportation improvements around Durango. And within that, we basically did a community outreach input process during every one of those iterations. And during those iterations, main avenue, pedestrian improvements, and accessibility came up every time. And then that was prioritized by the Multimodal Advisory Board in 2021. So after that was prioritized, or kind of concurrently, the Community Development Department started a visioning process that we now know that ended up in the conceptual design. And so that process was 2021 through 2022. After that was completed, the design on the multimodal division side started, and basically that was to create engineering drawings and design for the conceptual plan. And through that process, we only ended up doing a preliminary design for 2 blocks, and I'll get into a little bit more of that later. As far as engagement goes, there's a little bit 2 different components to engagement. There's the engagement that happened pre the preliminary design, so that would have been the conceptual design, and then engagement that has been occurring during the preliminary design. So we had, during the visioning conceptual design process, we had 19 meetings. Many of those were in person, some were online, 2 surveys with over 2,200 responses, and an online review. And then during the preliminary design, so far we've had 20 individual meetings with businesses and owners, and a public meeting with 90 attendees. And then I'll go through some other more recent engagement touch points that have happened more recently. So when we're talking about the design, The project is designing pedestrian safety improvements. So what we mean by that is we mean curb extensions at the intersections, ADA spaces, and trees and wider sidewalks, as well as ADA improved curb ramps. So recently, on September 17th, City Council approved Resolution R-224-54. And what this resolution is saying is that funding the construction of the new police department and city hall facility is a high priority for City Council. And the construction of downtown's next step and utilities is anticipated to be a significant cost investment. And so the completion of the design phase is necessary for City Council to have construction estimates, because right now we do not have them, allowing them to make informed decisions about whether to prioritize the project for construction in the future. And this next line is noted that we have a grant it's from mineral and gas lease extraction funding that is for $640,000. And that is to finalize the design phase with the city match $160,000. And then construction of both projects does require substantial financial commitments and would not be fiscally responsible to be done simultaneously. And therefore, spending on the construction phase of downtown's next steps should be suspended until direction is given to move forward and after the police department and city hall have begun construction. So that is the recent resolution that was passed. So engagement efforts during this preliminary design phase, we put out a community questionnaire, and so that was back in May, and then it closed in June. We've also held a focus group, which was late July, early August, and then we recently participated in a business forum that was hosted by BID, Chamber, and Local First. So I'll first start off with the questionnaire. Again, it was online from May 17th to June 7th. We had 703 responses. Out of those 703 responses, 83 were business and property owners, and 84% lived in Durango. I'll just hover around until it stops. The purpose of the questionnaire was to obtain feedback on the design, so specifically certain design elements. We did ask objective and preference questions to understand, how people felt about certain components of the design, and we did have one open-ended question at the end. What we heard. So we heard wider sidewalks and more trees were the top priority of elements. Historic character and expanded pedestrian space were the top objectives. And when we looked at and analyzed the open-ended comments, it was pretty mixed sentiment. So for the record, this is also online, so everybody can kind of see, and all the 374 comments are online as well, so you can read those for yourself. But 47% were in favor of bike ped improvements, 24% were neutral, not natural, and 28% were opposed. So, quick breakdown of the questionnaire results, and this is the objectives. So, out of the top objectives, maintaining the historical character of downtown was number one, expanding pedestrian space, safer pedestrian crossings and cycling, and economic vitality. And then, as far as the questionnaire results regarding the elements, and so what this is specifically about is curb extensions, extended curb extensions, additional trees, maintaining loading zones, etc. Wider sidewalks was the top, additional trees, and locating amenities at curb extensions. And don't worry, I will get into the design of what exactly a curb extension and all of those features are. So, downtown's next step focus group, we created a focus group out of 9 members. It's important to just notify that we made the selection process as anonymous as possible. And so we took out the names, we took out as much identifying information as we could, but we were objective in trying to get certain representation on the focus group. So that representation includes downtown business owners, county residents, cyclists, people living with a disability, minority groups, and we tried to get in favor and opposed folks on that focus group, which we did achieve. And so we had 2 meetings. The first meeting covered background, design, and questionnaire results. So one of the benefits of a focus group is this project is really complex, and there's a lot of nuances and details. And so the focus group allows us to really dive in heavy with a group of folks so that they fully understand all the ins and outs of the project. And then the second meeting was discussion and feedback. So basically, we kind of went through each of these components that were in the survey, and essentially asked, like, all right, let's have a discussion about it. What do people think? So ADA locations, loading zones, sidewalks, travel inlets, trees, curb extensions, and parking were the specific ones that we were looking for feedback on. That's nice music on there. Focus group feedback included ADA spaces, so support for additional loading zones. It came up from a lot of the businesses that the need for curbside loading was important. So, maintaining the yellow zones on the curb. Interest in being flexible parking during the busy season. So what that means is basically a loading zone, if we could make it so that during the winters when that's primarily used, and then during the summertime, that can be additional parallel parking space. Lane and sidewalk widths, maintain lane widths as they are, and there was a concern about sidewalk widths and usability for bistros, and what they were really identifying there is some folks that have bump outs now, they were worried that with expanded sidewalk space that they wouldn't have as much square footage as they do now with the bump out program. Trees, pretty much everybody was in favor of the trees and additional trees. However, it was brought up that there is a need to make sure that we maintain those trees. Curb extensions and parking. Several in the group definitely expressed the desire for more parking. And to do that, smaller curb extensions. So when it comes to the business forum, the forum requested and hosted same time that our questionnaire went out, so about that May, June time frame. And theirs was specific to their constituents, so mainly businesses, that wanted to hold a forum. So we held that forum on August 27th at the Innovation Center. And fortunately, the questions from businesses were provided to staff beforehand, so we had plenty of time to prep and to answer those questions. And those questions and answers are now also online on the Engage Durango webpage. So involved multiple department staff. We had myself up there, Sarah Hill, Transportation Director, Keith Doherty, the City Engineer, and Tommy Crosby from Community Development. We had approximately 100 attendees. And we are in the process of answering additional questions that came out of that forum, and those will also be posted online. So design status and updates, where we currently are in this project, and I just want to clarify that where we are and how we're moving forward is in compliance with that resolution that was passed. Preliminary design for the 600 and 700 blocks. We will be making changes to that preliminary design per the feedback, so that involves curb extensions. We're going to reduce some of those, add a few parking spaces back in. We're maintaining the lane widths as they are, and looking at a couple other things regarding loading zones that we've heard. The pilot status, so for those that have seen, we put out 2 new pilots. The city was awarded a grant from CDOT called Revitalizing Main Street Grant Program. And in that grant program, it's to demonstrate parts of the design as well as kind of test or have observational data from putting out temporary curb extensions. So with that, we put out those 2 pilots. We haven't gotten the temporary curb extensions out. We will be getting those out in October. We had some concerns from some businesses about the cowboy gathering. So we worked with the businesses, and we're going to do it on October 7th and 8th is when we're going to install those now. But we are going to remove the pedlet on the 600, have enough time to really activate it and put out, tables and other things, greenery, etc. So since they weren't able to really use it this year, we're going to go ahead and pull that one out for now. Design updates, again, we're going to be shortening curb extensions, adding 4 spaces back, and then keeping the lane widths by reducing the sidewalk widening. Here's just kind of, here's an image on the right of what we're looking at. So we'll paint the interior kind of a red brick color. We'll have white flex posts. And what this will allow us to do is basically now we can observe in real life how trucks are turning. So we did look at that in the engineering During the engineering design, we had turning templates is what it's referred to, but basically it shows us on a computer model how these trucks turn and what their turning radiuses are. But now with these temporary curb extensions, we're able to actually see that in real life, see where certain delineators are being run over, if they are, if not. It also gives us a chance to work with DFPD further and just get their large ladder trucks. In these design updates, we're going to be shortening this curb extension here, shortening this curb extension, and that basically adds 4 parking spaces back. We're going to be removing that trolley stop from that location. We're going to further evaluate curb extension links and bioswells on the south end of the 700 block. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to be delineating loading zones in the center left turn lane and updating some of the cross sections. And so again, that's just responding to what we've really heard from public feedback, both from the focus group, the questionnaire, and from the forum itself. And just kind of to give a little detail on these curb extensions. So essentially what that is we're bumping the curb line out to the edge of the travel lane close to the intersection, and what that does is that improves sight distance. It also shortens the crossing for pedestrians, makes them more visible, makes them less vulnerable in that space where we know that we've had several pedestrian crashes. And with that, that finishes my presentation.
Like I said, jump into about 15 minutes of question and answer. We'll hold to that, just so y'all know, and we'll do an introduction around the room of exactly who's here, lording over you. I need guys standing in the back. And then y'all can go ask questions of whoever and have conversations with whoever and get your swag.
The resolution that passed, I'm the city attorney, and it's kind of my job to explain what resolutions do. The resolution that passed at our last meeting was extremely significant because it suspended funding, meaning that prior direction for the council was to design and actually start constructing some downtown next steps. The action taken by council recently was in response to things that have been going on, so they actually defunded the brick and mortar portion of this project. Okay? Great.
Thank you. Okay, Sweetie, I saw your hand first.
Instead of curb extensions, what about extending the time of pedestrian crosses? Right now, the clock ticks. Why can't that time be expanded to make it longer for a pedestrian to cross instead of having a curb extension?
It can, and we have made that change. Specifically, we recently made that change to the College and Main intersection after we had 3 pedestrians struck within about a 6-month time period. We did make that change. However, those crashes actually happened while the pedestrian was allowed to walk, and it was from left turns, and vehicles basically just either not seeing that pedestrian in the crosswalk, or yeah, I can't necessarily explain that. So I guess just by adding time, that doesn't necessarily take away the risk and the crashes that have occurred out there, because again, those were while the walk sign was on, and it was from people turning left in their vehicles, striking those pedestrians.
Jerry Weiss, I noticed you had 2,200 city residents that responded to your survey, correct? There's 13,000 voters in the city. Rather than leave this to a decision by the 5 city council and the planning department, why can't this be put to a vote of a yes or no vote in April on the ballot and let the city decide this rather than letting
So it's a complex question, and what you're suggesting is certainly not out of the realm of possibility. I think what the city council has done is they have a pot of money they got from the state to finish the study. So they decided to do that. But the actual funding of the brick and mortar changes that the design contemplates, that's a long way off. That's not even, like I said, it's been defunded until they got things figured out with new city hall and new police department. So at some point during that process, what you're suggesting could certainly happen. So it's just too far down the road to commit one way or the other.
correct. But say that we do have an estimate by April, or before April. Is it possible to get the city council to put this to a vote of the city? We can't do it as citizens. They have to do it. We cannot, I talked to Tiffany Lee, we ourselves as a group, even with petitions, cannot put a question like that to a vote on the ballot. The city council has to do it.
I learned a long time ago when I was a baby lawyer not to answer questions as a lawyer that I don't know all the information about. I can't say whether that's true or not.
Okay, but you're saying it's in the realm of possibility.
Well, sure. I mean,
Okay.
The council can always decide to put a referendum in. I'm not sure that the public can't do it because I haven't studied that yet. But generally, the way government works, there are some roadblocks to
Yes.
citizens being able to control every decision the government makes, because we do live in a representative government. We pass on a lot of those responsibilities to our elected officials. All I'm saying is that as things stand today, April is way too soon. There's no way that my office could do my job and we could consult with the attorneys that we get to help us on election type issues to get it on the ballot in April. So I can tell you with certainty, it's not possible just from a time constraint to do it this April.
It's not impossible. Is that what you said on part of hearing?
No, I'm saying is it's not enough time to get it on in April. That would
Correct.
just be too fast. We couldn't move that fast.
But later on, it could be possible.
Anything is possible. And yeah, I mean, there is a scenario that could develop where this goes to the voters. The likelihood of that, I don't have a crystal ball, I can't tell you, but I can tell you that legally there is a path for that to happen.
Thank you.
Antonio?
Yeah, Devin, I was surprised that the pilot program with the pedlets and the bulb outs didn't include restriping so that people could see how narrow the lanes were going to be. And I know you're changing the travel lanes, but I'm assuming you're getting that your sidewalk is still going to be expanded by using a 3-foot space between the parked cars and the traffic lane, right? I mean, so I'm just surprised that that wasn't included in the pilot program so people could see what that was really like to get out of your car when you're right next to traffic again, like we used to do in the old days.
Yeah, so part of the reason is that's just a lot. That's a lot to go in there and actually spray off all those lines and then paint new lines. But with that, the 3 feet shoulder, again, we're not really changing the lane width now, so we are maintaining that. You know, if a resident wants to know what it's like to park next to adjacent traffic lane, and what curb extensions look like, I highly recommend going out to Three Springs. If you drive down, I can't remember if it's Confluence or Mercado, but one of those streets, which is pretty busy during the middle of the day.
Right.
That is exactly what we're talking about, just without a center left turn lane. It is parallel parking directly adjacent to the travel lane where, yeah, you're opening up your door. But again, it's 50 miles per hour, slower speed limits. Yeah.
Have you had any input from the fire department regarding those bump outs and turning the bumpers around those 90-degree corners?
We have, yeah. So when we first started, even during the conceptual design, the Durango Fire Protection District has been involved. So back then, we actually drove down their new ladder truck, put it down on Main. They showed us how it worked. We discussed it. We have pictures of that. And then we've also had their turning templates. So we've looked, again, doing the modeling and looked at how they would turn with those curb extensions, and they're able to make it, as well as large semi trucks that come and unload. However, like I said, with us putting these temporary curb extensions out, it does give us that practical real world experience that we can go out there, and that's in the plan, is to have DFPD bring the truck down. Sure, let's do some donuts around there and see what we can do.
Puzzle at your process. Ordinarily, you would make a set of assumptions, publish the assumptions, let them be challenged. That was the cause of business as usual. And then you'd have a series of different alternatives, which would be cost out over a life cycle. I see nothing like that. You're going to run from a couple of interviews or a series of interviews to one design, and you're either going to fund that or you're not.
The process that we follow is pretty common, especially in transportation planning. I've been in it for 10 years, and I've also taken a lot of classes on it. So what we did is when we first came during the conceptual design, it was basically what do you want to see come out of this process? Because we were looking, with the goals of accessibility and pedestrian improvements. What do you want to see happen? And then we kind of heard from the community what they wanted to see. And then after that, we took and we came up with 4 conceptual alternatives to look at. And so we did have 4 different designs. We looked at others before that, prior to that, to see what can work within this right of way. And then we took those 4 out to the public, had their feedback again. We took that feedback back to the design team, engineers, everybody looked at it, and then we ended up with the preferred design that came out of that, and that was the conceptual design, which is online. And then that is what we have now taken to the preliminary design, and that follows our process typically how it goes. As well as other communities. I mean, I've worked in other communities. And, it was basically just a real specified out because we don't know exactly how many square feet of sidewalk in this case, how much pavement in this, because it was conceptual at that point. It was not down to the how expensive than this one versus this one.
I want to jump back to funding because early in your discussion you mentioned something about mineral and gas grant funding, and then later you mentioned a grant from CDOT. Are those the 2 that make up $800,000?
They're 2 separate grants. So the one that's from the Energy Impact and Mineral Impact Fee Fund. That one is the one that's paying for the $640,000 that we have the $160,000 match, and so that one's specific for design. And then you're correct. And then the other funding piece, which is coming from CDOT, was just for the pilot project portion. So the pilots and temporary curb
the
extensions.
city council's meeting on the 17th, which I didn't fully understand, are those 2 grants now on hold? Are they stopped?
No, because those are associated with the design, not the construction. So is the construction.
This thing?
So without design, we have no idea how much it would cost. So you have to get to at least a 60% design level to have an engineer's estimate, and a 90% level is when we actually have a better understanding with costs. So to get there, we do have to go through design.
Can the city council put it on ballot?
That would be a better time than trying to do it in April before we have the cost.
Hey, can you just talk at all about the utility, the impact of the resolution on utilities and how utilities is looking, and I don't know if you can speak to this or not, but how utilities is looking at the eventual need for that revamp utilities up and down Main?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of discussion, and I'll be honest, Bob Lowry back there is probably the better person to answer that question. So I may kick it back to him.
Way to have him on deck.
I'm Bob Lowry. I'm the interim public works director for a couple more months. But the utilities on Main Street are kind of like me. They're over 80 years old. And a lot of them just on Main Street, but all over Durango. And it's imperative that we start addressing the backlog of aging infrastructure. I suspect that that's pretty high on the priority list for replacement of water and sewer lines and perhaps improving some of the storm drainage. Main Street's not the only place we have that issue. But I think the very first piece of construction, whether we move forward with next steps or not, will be underground utility replacements.
Thanks, Bob.
I'm sorry to ask a second question, but I think I talked to one city council person who said these grants are free money to us, and they are not. They're indirectly taxed money. It's not free. Just so that the planning department and the city understands that those are indirectly taxed money to everybody. This is where that money is coming from. There is not a creating indirectly.
I think part of that too is like that's why they don't want to squander it, because they have
Correct.
grant funding up already, but
But
I'll
just so
pass
it's
that
not
over
free.
to you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Free money.
so the energy funds are actually from mineral and lease tax. I'm looking at Sarah because she's read it more lately than I have. Yeah, it's a severance tax.
Come on up, Sarah.
Yeah. So it's a little bit different. It's not like you were paying for it out of your pocket. It's a little bit
Yes,
different.
but it's
coming
deducted from the
gas.
energy company, so they don't have to pay tax on that money they're putting in a grant. So it's indirectly taxed, just so you know it's not a free money.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Tony?
Yeah, two quick questions, I'll be quick about it. The bump out program, how long will that go on? How long will we have bump outs in the middle of Main Street? And the second one, you talk about college being where the problems are, and we all understand that. Can you actually put bulb outs on College Drive? I mean, you're trying to figure out a way to make pedestrians safer on College, right?
Correct.
Can you actually put?
So, clarification on the first question though, which, gosh, I've now
How long
like.
does the bump out?
How long is it? Thank you. Okay, so, are you talking about for the season or how many years?
Years.
So I believe that city council approved, I think it was a 5-year, and that was 2 years ago. Scott Shine, I see some shaking of heads. I want to say we're on year 2 of the 5-year approval for it, but I may be 1 year off on that. I do know that it was for 5 years. I just don't know where we are in that process. So the other piece of that regarding the curb extension, so College is one of our highest pedestrian impact spots in town. However, 12th Street is also, 12th and Main is also another spot. We've had some at, I don't have it from here. We've had some at multiple intersections. So it's not just College and Main. That's just where we had 3 within a very short time period, 6 months, where those 3 people went to the hospital. We did have one on 12th Street also within that relative time frame as well. So regarding the curb extensions at College, we can put them on the main side. So we can put them on Main, but to put them on College, and right now we have not had that in the plans. We just have it on the main side, which is where one of the crashes did occur, was right there on the main side. And then to address the other 2, that's where we've kind of changed the timing of the signal. But again, the curb extensions help, it doesn't just help when you are crossing the road, but it also helps slow those vehicles down, and it helps people pay more attention, because when you make things a little more complicated, people have to pay a little more attention to what they're doing, versus when it's nice and open and less complicated, well, people can become a little more relaxed at that point.
We have time for one more question.
Dana Jones. Speaking of that, if a 30-foot truck makes deliveries on Main all the time, needs to make a right-hand turn off one of the side streets on the Main, with these curb extensions, aren't they going to have to use that? That truck's going to sit there until that person moves. You're going to have a backup wherever there's a truck trying to turn right on the Main Street. So they're going to be driving around trying to make left-hand turns on the Main Street.
So we actually did test that. We looked at that. We actually took cones out and put them, how the curb extensions are going to line up, and tested it in real life again to make sure that they were able to make that turn without going into the center left turn lane. Now the larger trucks, like the big what we term WB40, so the Cisco trucks, some of those, depending on the turning movement, may go into the center lane. So that's where we've actually talked about what you have to do is you just move you basically put a stop bar there and you move that back a little bit so that they're able to make that wider swing turn. Same with WB. Like right now, when you have the bigger semis, they have to do that now. The bigger semis currently can make that turn, so it would be essentially the same situation. But we have looked at that and are keeping that in mind. Yeah.
Okay. Your questions don't have to end, just in this setting they're ending. We're gonna move around the room now. Before we do that, I do wanna let you know, but if you haven't visited, who's been on Engage Durango? Raise your hand if you've been on Engage Durango. Okay, great. I would like to do that straw poll. This is where you can find it. This is where all of the projects that we're asking for community input on You can find those there. You can find tons of information about each of the projects. And if you're missing something and you want to see something different about a project, you're like, hey, I'm not seeing this, or X, Y, Z, it would be helpful. Just shoot me an email and I'll try and get it up there for you. But each of the projects have a way for you to provide the city with feedback. So check out Engage Durango. That's where all this information is. These slides will go up. There's a QR code again for the survey for tonight's forum. And then I'm going to pass the mic around so you all can meet everybody in the room and for people, remember. Again, my name is Clancy. I'm a community engagement specialist for the city.
Again, I'm Mark Morgan, the city attorney.
Hi, y'all. I'm Erin Hyder, assistant city manager.
Evan Roth, city IT.
Hi, Devin Schmidt, chief financial officer for the city.
Community Development Department.
Jessica Buell, mayor.
Tony Carey, airport director at the Durango County Airport.
Laura Rick, public outreach and education for Public Works.
Bob Lowry, your public works director.
Devin King, multi-modal manager.
Hi, I'm Sarah Hill, transportation director.
Lynn County Henderson, director of your Durango Public Library.
Okay, I have to follow that. Kelly Schmidt, Parks and Recreation Director. Please come see me for a t-shirt before you leave.
Justin Carlton, IT director. Come on over and play some nerd trivia with me.
I'm Penny Harder, the city clerk. Bonnie Kling, the HR director. I'm Katie Fox, I'm the 911 director at Durango Emergency Communications Center.
Bryce Current, library. Hey, but I am looking for Tim Walsworth, just asking for
Ben got skipped.
I know.
Ben Lloyd, 911.
Yeah. You're in the room.
I'm Josh Wool. I'm the Public Information Office as the digital police specialist.
Not the mayor.
No, not the mayor.
You left us in time to stop back there. I did? Yeah, I missed it. One more thing I did want to highlight, on Saturday we're doing an open house for the new PD City Hall building. So the historic high school building, if you want to get in there and see the very much before, it's, Halloween time, kind of fits in with that theme right now. But we're doing an open house from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock Saturday morning. We'll do 3 of these, one for this month, one in October, and one in November. So if you'd like to get in and see it, like truly, we haven't done much with that building since 9R moved out. Great opportunity for you to come in. You can see those consent Durango page if you don't want to wake up on Saturday morning. But if you actually want to come step foot in the building, come join us. We'll have coffee and snacks there for a nice Saturday morning walkabout. Hopefully we don't hear any random door slam. Anyway, feel free to know about the room, meet folks, ask about projects. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it. Yes?
I just want a quick thank you for the counter board.
Oh!
Going on Facebook. I live in Sweet Springs, but every day I have to come pick up my grandkids and meet them, and sometimes it's a nightmare, so now I can go on there and say, okay, this way, and this way.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the thank. Appreciate that. And that's, I think, out of public information and public works, right?
Yep.
Yep. So thanks them. Be sure to visit their little zones. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.